History is not always written in ink or on paper. Sometimes, it is etched in stone and buried in the earth, waiting millennia for its story to be told. In the highlands of ancient Anatolia, on a hill long known as Potbelly Hill, lies a secret that predates the pyramids by over 7,000 years. Here, the boundary between myth and history blurs. A ring of towering monoliths stands silent, older than any city, older than any king, defying everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization. It is a place of creation and erasure, light and shadow, a temple hewn from living rock at a time when humanity, we believed, was incapable of such dreams. 12,000 years ago, as the last ice age released its grip, a group of nomadic hunters and gatherers conceived the inconceivable. Göbekli Tepe, a monumental sanctuary on a lonely hill, built before humans had metal tools, farms, or even pottery. Its weathered pillars loom out of the earth like an ancient prophecy, their surfaces whispering of sacred beasts and primordial gods. This site has outlived empires and witnessed stars wheel through the sky for 100 centuries, and yet it was deliberately buried and forgotten by those who made it. Why? What compelled the earliest builders of history to create a masterpiece in stone, and then entomb it beneath its own rubble? Our journey today is a treasure hunt for the answer to a single burning question. Who built Göbekli Tepe, and why did they erase themselves from history? To find that answer, we must travel back to the very dawn of human society, to a world before cities and kings, and witness the moment when mere hunter-gatherers reached for immortality in stone. Picture the world in 9600 BCE, long before the pyramids, before Stonehenge, before the first pharaohs or ziggurats. Humanity is scattered in small bands living off the land. The last remnants of the Ice Age are fading, and the Fertile Crescent, a lush belt of grasslands and rivers, teems with wild wheat, herds of gazelle, and flocks of birds. In these millennia, there are no farms, no writing, no metal, only simple camps and temporary shelters. The very concept of a monumental building or a temple is unthinkable. Our ancestors survived by hunting and gathering, following seasonal migrations, rarely staying in one place for long. Yet change is in the air. The climate is warming and stabilizing, giving rise to abundance in certain favored regions. One such region is Upper Mesopotamia, in what is now southeastern Turkey, near the headwaters of the Euphrates. Here, wild cereals grow in profusion, and game is plentiful. For the first time in tens of thousands of years, groups of hunter-gatherers can gather in larger numbers and remain for longer periods in one area without exhausting its resources. These people have no kings or priests as far as we know, but they share something powerful: traditions, rituals, and stories that bind them together. Around communal fires under the stars, they tell tales of spirits in the animals they hunt, of ancestors watching from the sky. They are hunter-gatherers, but they are also dreamers. It is in this world, before villages or agriculture, that something impossible begins to take shape. On a limestone plateau overlooking the Heron Plain, a band of people gazes out over the land. From this height, you can see for miles across rolling steppe and distant mountains, a commanding view, perhaps chosen for its very majesty. These people decide to build something new, something permanent. With no blueprint to guide them, they will undertake a project so monumental that by all conventional wisdom it shouldn't even be conceivable. At a time when most humans live in simple huts, they plan to raise great rings of stone. Why here on this hill? Perhaps it is a holy place, a sacred center where clans meet seasonally to trade and celebrate. Perhaps they believe this hill is the navel of the world, a bridge between earth and sky. Later generations will call it Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill, but to its creators it might have been the axis of their cosmos, a place chosen by the gods. They gather stone tools, flint blades, and obsidian points, the only technology they possess, and begin to quarry the bedrock itself. Night after night, the stars wheel above as they chip away at the limestone with patience and determination. By day, they haul and heave, moving stones that outweigh any single human by many times. These people have no beasts of burden, no carts or wheels. They harness only human muscle and ingenuity, using ropes twisted from sinew and plant fiber, wooden sledges sliding over the earth, and sheer communal effort. This undertaking will take years, perhaps generations. It will require an unseen form of leadership and cooperation in a society with no known hierarchy. And yet, the evidence of our own eyes, the stones themselves, tells us that they succeeded. As the sun rises on a new age, the silhouette of something unprecedented emerges atop the hill. Massive pillars of stone erected in circles, standing like sentinels at the edge of history. The world has never seen anything like it. The question that echoes through time is, who inspired this act of creation, and what vision sustained these people to accomplish it? As we stand at the threshold of Göbekli Tepe's birth, we realize humanity is crossing a threshold of its own. The first builders of Göbekli Tepe remain nameless. They left no writings, no statues of themselves, only the great stone circles as their calling card. But archaeology allows us to glimpse aspects of who they were. We know they were hunter-gatherers living at the end of the Stone Age, likely organized in tribes or extended families. Their flint tools and the bones of wild animals tell us that much. They hunted gazelles and wild cattle. They foraged for nuts and wild grains. Yet these people dared to attempt what even later farming societies might have found daunting. How did they do it? Recent excavations suggest a surprising answer. Even as purely wild foragers, they had begun settling down at least part of the year. Archaeologists have uncovered traces of dwellings and even a system of rainwater harvesting on the hills near the site. Imagine simple stone houses or huts clustered near the rising pillars, a base camp for the builders. These were not nomads passing through for a day. They might have lived here for seasons at a time, perhaps years, to tend to their great project. If so, Göbekli Tepe starts to resemble the earliest village, not one of farmers, but of visionaries bound by a common purpose. What drove them to build on such a scale? There were no pharaohs ordering this labor, no empire demanding a monument. The impulse seems to have come from within, a spiritual or communal inspiration. Perhaps a charismatic leader, a shaman or elder, convinced the clans that on this hill they could commune with the divine. Or perhaps the very act of building was a form of worship. To carve and erect a mighty pillar was to honor the unseen powers of nature or the spirits of ancestors. Every blow of hammerstone on limestone was, maybe, a prayer. Think of the logistics facing these people. Each pillar they raised was up to 5.5 meters, 18 feet, tall, and weighed as much as 15 to 20 tons. Without metal chisels, they used hard flint to slowly peck away intricate shapes. Without cranes, they likely dug ramps or pivoted the stones upright using ropes, levered by dozens of strong hands. Some pillars were quarried from bedrock hundreds of meters away, leaving behind craters that can still be seen. In the quarries, archaeologists have found unfinished pillars, as if the work was sometimes abandoned mid-task, testaments to trials and errors of these Stone Age engineers. Now imagine the human side. Hundreds of people from scattered nomadic bands coming together at this hilltop. Children scamper around the work site, fetching water from cisterns carved into the rock. Women and men prepare enormous feasts. Archaeologists have found vast quantities of animal bones, evidence of big game hunts and meat roasting on fires. There is even evidence of brewing. Traces of fermented grain beverages in stone vessels have been detected, as if the builders indulged in the world's first beer-fueled celebrations. By night, laughter and new stories echo in the encampment. Stranger meets stranger. Different clans exchange gifts, ideas, genes. It's part festival, part workforce, and part congregation, the first known great gathering of our species. Amidst this hive of activity stand the master artisans, highly skilled carvers chipping animal figures into the monoliths with astonishing precision. One can picture them running calloused fingers over the stone, coaxing out the shape of a leaping fox or a coiled serpent. These carvings are not utilitarian. They are rich with meaning and artistry. They tell us that these early humans had a complex imagination. They were not just surviving day to day. They were investing immense effort in something transcendent, something meant to endure. And endure it has. As the final pillars of the earliest circles were set in place, the first builders of Göbekli Tepe looked upon their creation with justifiable awe. Here, on a once barren hill, now stood rings of stone that would outlast their great-great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren. In that founding era, humanity built its first cathedral under the open sky. But what exactly had they built, and what did it mean to them? To answer that, we must step through the porthole of time these ancient pillars provide, into the stone circles themselves, and examine the legacy the builders left carved in cold, hard rock. At the heart of Göbekli Tepe are the stone circles, enclosures of standing pillars that transform this hilltop into a sacred sculpture garden. Walking into one of these circles would have been a jaw-dropping experience for a Stone Age person, and it remains so for us today. The largest circle, over 20 meters across, features a ring of pillars around its perimeter like guardians facing inward. At its center stand two colossal monoliths, taller than a two-story house. These central pillars are slender and rectangular, with smooth surfaces that catch the first and last light of the sun. They face one another like a pair of sentinels, or perhaps like dancers frozen in stone, eternally mid-ritual. An aerial view of Göbekli Tepe's main excavation area reveals several circular enclosures emerging from the earth. In the center of each ring, twin megaliths stand upright, surrounded by smaller pillars in a perfect circle. From above, it becomes clear that the architects had a plan. The circles are not haphazard. They are carefully laid out and even aligned in relation to one another with surprising geometry. Archaeologists discovered that 3 of the best preserved enclosures form an almost perfect equilateral triangle, a design likely achieved with rope and stakes, showing an early grasp of geometric planning. In other words, the builders of Göbekli Tepe, who had no written math, were nonetheless employing principles of design that would not be out of place in later pyramids or cathedrals. Inside these circles, the pillars themselves are the storytellers. Every pillar is adorned, not randomly, but with deliberate symbols. There are animals of all kinds, snarling lions, charging wild boars, coiled serpents, leopards on the prowl, and more, all carved in high relief. Snakes slither along the edges of some pillars. Elsewhere, abstract symbols like crescents and H-like glyphs appear alongside the animals. Each creature may have been a totem, representing a clan, a spirit, or a mythic ancestor. Noticeably, many animals depicted are predators or scavengers rather than everyday prey, suggesting they held special symbolic significance. Vultures, for instance, feature prominently, just as they do in later Neolithic sites like Catalhoyuk, where they are associated with exposure of the dead. Perhaps the vulture carvings hint at excarnation rituals, leaving bodies for birds to cleanse or other beliefs about death and the afterlife. In fact, on one pillar a vulture is carved beside a headless human figure, a chilling clue that Göbekli Tepe was likely tied to death and spiritual transformation. A decorated monolith, Pillar 43, the famous vulture stone, displays a menagerie of creatures. A vulture with outstretched wings dominates the slab, below which a scorpion, an eagle, and other symbols are visible. Some believe this tableau has ritual significance, perhaps related to sky burials or cosmic events. Human imagery at Göbekli Tepe is rare but present. A few pillars have arms and hands carved along their sides, meeting at the waist as if the T-shaped stone is a stylized humanoid. This suggests the pillars themselves represent people or deities, perhaps divine ancestors or guardian figures standing in eternal vigil. In essence, each stone circle is like a gathering of stone beings, and people may have entered to commune among these silent, impassive figures. Göbekli Tepe could have been a meeting place between the human world and the spirit world, where carved stone giants embodied powerful forces of nature or the revered souls of the dead. There are practical features too. Low stone benches are built against the interior walls of some enclosures, likely for seating during ceremonies. With the stone circles completed, one might expect the builders to settle permanently around their creation. Yet, strangely, no permanent houses or villages from the earliest phase exist at the site. It seems the hilltop was kept special, a sacred precinct unsullied by everyday life. The people who came here probably camped on the slopes or in nearby valleys, approaching the rings only for ritual gatherings. Göbekli Tepe was not a town. It was something new, a pilgrimage site, a sanctum, a place to assemble and then disperse. By raising these circles of stone, the early builders also constructed new social realities. Within the halo of pillars, hundreds of people could stand together, sharing in rites that bonded them. Here, scattered bands briefly became one people. It's easy to imagine the flicker of torches illuminating the carvings at night, shadows dancing as chants echoed among the stones. Perhaps great feasts or initiations were held here. For once, disparate groups had a common holy ground. Göbekli Tepe's very existence thrums with contradictions that captivate us. These people had no written language, yet they created a lasting symbolic masterpiece. They lacked agriculture, yet built a monumental complex we once assumed only farming societies could manage. They had no kings or stratified classes, as far as evidence shows, yet they organized labor on a massive scale. Each revelation from the stones upends our assumptions, and each answer begets new questions. One thing is certain: when these stone circles rose, ancient eyes beheld an entirely new kind of human creation. This desolate hilltop had become a monumental sanctuary, perhaps the first of its kind on Earth. But even as Göbekli Tepe flourished, mysteries were multiplying. To truly appreciate the enigma, we must next confront the puzzles that still baffle archaeologists. Puzzles that will lead us toward the heart of Göbekli Tepe's enduring question. Göbekli Tepe today is an archaeological marvel, but it is also an enigma. Even after decades of study, we are left with profound mysteries. How was it built with Stone Age tools? Why do some features seem so advanced for their time? Why was the entire complex eventually buried and abandoned? These questions invite both scholarly investigation and imaginative conjecture, deepening the allure of this site. First, the technology puzzle. As noted, the builders had only stone hammers and flint blades. How did they achieve such clean, precise carvings and raise such massive pillars? Archaeologists have indeed found flint tools strewn about the site, so the work was done with these simple implements. Yet some reliefs are so finely rendered, and some pillars so smoothly finished, that one can't help but marvel at the skill involved. It's as if these Stone Age sculptors were masters of their craft on par with artists thousands of years later. What techniques did they use? Did they sand or polish the limestone beyond mere chipping? Each pillar is a testament to a learning process, perhaps refined over generations, with techniques passed down as the sanctum grew. The absence of metal tools where we would expect them leaves us in awe of human ingenuity. Then there is the question of alignment and purpose. Some researchers have proposed that certain pillars align with the rising of particular stars, such as Sirius or constellations on the horizon. The idea of an ancient observatory is intriguing but remains unproven, and the excavation team largely doubts an astronomical role. Still, the site's ceremonial use likely followed natural cycles, perhaps gatherings timed to solstices or the migrations of game, even if it was not a precise sky calendar. In any case, the heavens and seasons would have formed the grand backdrop to whatever rites took place among these stones. Most bewildering of all is the fate of Göbekli Tepe, its deliberate burial. After roughly 1,500 years of use and modification, around 8,000 BC the site was methodically covered over with debris and soil. Enclosures were completely filled in, pillars submerged and hidden. This was no collapse or natural disaster. It was an intentional act. Thousands of tons of material were piled into the stone circles, entombing the mighty pillars that so much toil had raised. Why would anyone do this? Here we confront the silent, perhaps sorrowful decision of the descendants of the original builders. Some speculate that the very beliefs which built Göbekli Tepe eventually demanded its closure, maybe a final ritual to shutter a portal to the spirit world. Or perhaps new social realities arose that made the old monument obsolete or even feared. One theory holds that as farming life began to take hold, the hunter-gatherer lifestyle and its great sanctuaries lost central importance. The new farmers may have seen this hill of stone as a relic of a bygone era. Burying it could have been both practical, reclaiming land, and symbolic, laying the past to rest. Why bury the pillars instead of simply abandoning them? Abandoned structures are common in archaeology, but buried ones are rare. The care taken to fill in the enclosures, and thus preserve them, suggests an act of reverence, not destruction. It's as though the people were saving their sacred place for eternity, like carefully closing a book they treasured. Perhaps they hoped one day to return, or believed the spirits would watch over it beneath the earth. We cannot know their minds, but the result is clear. Göbekli Tepe survived 10,000 years of oblivion in remarkable condition. By hiding it, its builders inadvertently ensured that when modern archaeologists finally came, they found its carvings sharp and its layouts intact, protected from millennia of weather and human interference by a blanket of earth. In erasing themselves, they also preserved their story, a paradox that feels almost intentional, as if they meant to send a time capsule to the far future. All these mysteries bring us back to the core puzzle. Who were these people, and why did they erase their own legacy? We have journeyed through the practical and the puzzling. Now we stand before the heart of the enigma. In the face of such profound questions, we must confront them head-on, in all their facets. For all that we have uncovered at Göbekli Tepe, one question drives our exploration. Who built this place? And why did they erase themselves? This isn't just a matter of identity. It's about motive and legacy. We must consider the humans behind the stones in full dimension, their lives, their aspirations, and their fate. Who were they? In a literal sense, they were among the earliest people to settle the Fertile Crescent at the end of the Ice Age. They had no written language to tell us their names or myths, but they clearly shared a rich culture, the echoes of which we see in the carved animals and symbols. They were likely the ancestors of the first farming communities, yet they themselves were not farmers. They occupied a unique moment in history, standing on the threshold between the Mesolithic world of roving foragers and the Neolithic world of settled farmers. Perhaps we might call them a bridge generation, or even a civilization in its infancy. They were not primitive in any mental sense. Their works prove they had imagination, organizational skill, and deep spiritual or social motivations. Why, then, after centuries of use, did they erase all that work? This part of the mystery forces us into the realm of informed conjecture. One possibility is that the society that built Göbekli Tepe changed fundamentally over time. Imagine generations passing. The grandchildren of the original builders grow up with the temple always there on the hill. Perhaps the rituals evolve or conflicts arise. It could be that beliefs shifted, a new cult or social order might have declared the old practices outmoded or even dangerous. Human history often shows such moments. When new ideologies emerge, they sometimes bury the old, literally, in this case. Göbekli Tepe's burial might represent a prehistoric reformation, a conscious closing of a chapter of faith. Another perspective touches on a cycle of creation and destruction that ancient people may have ritually embraced. Some evidence at Göbekli Tepe hints that the enclosures were not static. Older pillars seem to have been intentionally buried and smaller ones built on top, as if periodically renewing the sanctuaries on a smaller scale. If true, then the ultimate burial of the entire site might have been the final act of renewal, the society shedding its old skin entirely. They could have seen the closing and burial of the site as the completion of its ritual life cycle, necessary before moving on to a new way of life. In erasing themselves so thoroughly, these people left us a paradoxical legacy. They achieved an extraordinary feat, some call it a big bang, of human culture, and then vanished without a trace of personal history. Not a single individual's name or image survives from their world. They are anonymous, and maybe that was intentional. Göbekli Tepe was not about immortalizing kings or leaders. There are no portraits of rulers here, no inscriptions boasting of conquests. Instead, it enshrines animals and abstract symbols, as if the community or the cosmos itself was the hero, not any one person. By burying their temple, they may have believed they were respectfully closing a sacred era rather than obliterating it. It's possible the builders didn't see it as erasure at all. Perhaps in their worldview, to ritually bury the sanctuary was to seed it in the earth, returning it to the divine. In that sense, they might have viewed the act not as destroying their legacy, but completing it. Of course, from our perspective, they effectively vanished from history. For over 10,000 years, no one knew they had ever existed. Not a whisper of them survived in any myth or legend we've found. Their entire culture was forgotten until the pillars re-emerged in our time. That fact alone, that a society capable of such greatness could disappear so utterly, is a humbling reminder of how fragile memory can be. And yet, ironically, by burying Göbekli Tepe, those people ensured their story would one day be heard. If they had not covered it, the site might have eroded away completely and their accomplishment lost forever. Instead, the sand and soil protected it, and now the world is finally listening. In a way, the builders of Göbekli Tepe did speak to us across time, only in a voice we are just beginning to understand. So, who were they and why did they erase themselves? They were innovative hunter-gatherers standing at civilization's threshold, who built something transcendent and then chose, for reasons we can only theorize, to close the curtain on their own stage. Perhaps they changed and became the first farmers, carrying forward new traditions while laying the old to rest. Perhaps they believed they had fulfilled a divine mission and needed no further monument. Ultimately, the full answer eludes us, hidden with them beneath the Anatolian earth. But the magnitude of the question drives us to keep digging, both literally and figuratively, as we seek to understand not only this site, but the very origin of human civilization. Göbekli Tepe stands as a rebuke to the simple story we use to tell about civilization's rise. That old narrative went, humans invented agriculture, which led to surplus food, which led to villages, then cities, and only then came temples and complex religion. But here on this windswept hill, we have a temple built before agriculture, a monument erected by people with no cities or kings. It's a paradox carved in stone, monumental architecture before settled civilization. Göbekli Tepe suggests that the spark of civilization, the urge to build, to come together, to worship, may have ignited even before humans domesticated a single seed. This flips our timeline upside down. It forces us to ask, was this the birthplace of civilization? Not civilization as in cities and empires, but civilization as an idea, as communal effort in service of shared ideals. In many ways, Göbekli Tepe is that primordial birthplace. It is the first known large-scale cooperative construction project in human history. Such large cooperation and shared vision is a cornerstone of civilization. By the traditional definition, the Göbekli Tepe people didn't have all the features of a civilization, no writing, no urban life. But they had something fundamental, the capacity to unify in purpose, to plan long-term, and to express complex concepts through art and architecture. It hints that the roots of civilization run deeper than we thought, and that early humans were experimenting with sophisticated social and religious practices far earlier. One of Göbekli Tepe's profound lessons is that the human mind was modern far earlier than assumed. Our distant ancestors, even before farming, were capable of imagination, planning, and symbolic thought on a grand scale. Civilization, therefore, did not start with a bang in Sumer or Egypt out of nowhere. Its foundations were being laid in places like this hilltop long before. The conventional idea had been that material necessity, farming surplus, led to spiritual and cultural complexity. Göbekli Tepe suggests the opposite might be true, that ideology and community, a shared spiritual or social drive, could have been the cause that led to material changes like farming. Klaus Schmidt, the site's late excavator, captured this reversal simply. First came the temple, then the city. In other words, perhaps it was not farming that enabled temples, but temples, or the urge to gather for ritual, that catalyzed farming. Consider what that means. Was religion the engine of social evolution? At Göbekli Tepe, a religious or ceremonial impulse seems to have been the prime mover, not economic necessity. People united here to build something meaningful, and in doing so they likely had to innovate new forms of organization and sustenance. Some have even proposed that this push to construct a sacred place led directly to agriculture, fields of wild grain harvested to supply the feasts, gradually leading to cultivation. If true, then humanity's first steps toward civilization were motivated by the search for meaning and communion, not just hunger or self-interest. The need to worship, to gather in the name of shared beliefs, could be what actually spurred stable communities and farming. Faith, in a sense, may have fathered farming. This theory is still debated. Not all scholars are convinced that ritual came strictly before agriculture. Some evidence suggests early cultivation was already underway in the region while Göbekli Tepe was active. Perhaps the reality is a feedback loop. Communal rituals spurred experimentation with farming, and farming in turn supported larger communities that intensified rituals. But no matter the nuances, Göbekli Tepe has shattered the old linear model. We now see the dawn of civilization as a more complex tapestry in which spiritual and social forces play as central a role as economic ones. There is a second paradox in Göbekli Tepe's legacy. The creators of this marvel did not endure as a distinct culture. Usually, when we think of grand monuments, we think of the enduring civilizations behind them, Egypt, Maya, etc. But here, the monument vastly outlived the culture that built it. Göbekli Tepe's people achieved an astonishing feat, yet their way of life was relatively short-lived and left no continuous tradition that we know of. In a sense, Göbekli Tepe was a glorious dead end, or perhaps better, a stepping stone. It didn't immediately lead to a city or empire on that spot. Instead, it was buried, and later civilizations would arise elsewhere. Is a civilization unsuccessful because it doesn't last, even if it plants seeds for the future? Göbekli Tepe forces us to broaden our definition of success. The builders did not create an empire, but they pioneered ideas and social structures that may have seeded later civilizations across the Fertile Crescent. From their perspective, legacy might not have mattered. They built their monument for their present needs, to honor their gods or unify their people, not to impress posterity. They couldn't have known that 10,000 years later, across an unimaginable gulf of time, strangers, us, would rediscover their work and puzzle over it. In that disconnect lies a poignant truth about human endeavor. We strive, we create, and often we are forgotten, yet sometimes our creations speak long after we're gone in ways we never intended. If Göbekli Tepe's builders unwittingly pioneered civilization, their story is both inspiring and cautionary. It suggests that the quest for meaning is as fundamental to humans as the quest for food, that our spiritual or communal drives can reshape the world as much as our hunger can. It also shows that great achievements can be forgotten, hidden for ages beneath dust. Humanity's story is not a straight upward line. It's filled with false starts, lost chapters, and brilliant innovations followed by collapse or disappearance. The lesson here is humility. There may be entire sagas of our past that we have yet to uncover, and assumptions about primitive ancestors crumble when we gaze upon Göbekli Tepe's pillars. We have explored the paradoxes, a temple before farms, a culture that created and concealed. Now our journey nears its climax, where new discoveries promise to shed more light on these enigmas. To truly grasp what Göbekli Tepe means for the human saga, we must peer into the latest revelations and the tantalizing hints of what might still lie buried, and what that says about our species' memory and destiny. Even now, Göbekli Tepe is not done revealing its secrets. In truth, We have only scratched the surface of this vast hill of wonders. Less than 10% of the site has been excavated. The rest remains underground, mapped only by geophysical surveys. What lies in those untouched areas is a tantalizing mystery. Scans indicate at least 20 enclosures in total are buried within the mound. So far, archaeologists have unearthed only a handful. It's as though we stumbled on a grand library where most of the books are still sealed beneath the sand. We've read a few chapters, while entire volumes remain unopened at our feet. The story extends beyond Göbekli Tepe itself. Archaeologists are now uncovering Karahan Tepe and other sites in the surrounding Taz Tepeler, Stone Hills, region. At Karahan Tepe, for instance, dozens of T-shaped pillars and mysterious stone carvings, including life-sized carved heads emerging from bedrock, have come to light. These new discoveries suggest Göbekli Tepe was not a singular marvel, but one of several connected sanctuaries in a broad cultural phenomenon. This was a regional flowering of complex ritual life, not an isolated miracle. It means our treasure hunt for understanding doesn't end with one hill. It spans an entire prehistoric landscape, each side a piece of a grand puzzle. Together, they could reveal how ideas spread and evolved at the dawn of the Neolithic. As the excavations continue, Göbekli Tepe teaches us a final lesson in humility. The past is broader and richer than we ever imagined. Each layer dug up is a layer further back in time, closer to Ice Age ancestors we once underestimated. Those people, long dismissed as primitive, now astonish us with their sophistication. Our collective memory, our history, is being rewritten not by kings' chronicles, but by the earth itself giving up its dead. In these stones, the long silent builders of 10,000 years ago finally speak. We stand today on the verge of knowing much more, yet mindful that we may never know it all. Here, at the climax of our journey, knowledge meets mystery. We must gather the treasure of insight we've earned and see what it tells us about the human saga. The paradoxes and lessons of Göbekli Tepe now crystallize into something that transcends time, a message from our deep past to our present, and a challenge for us to remember what was nearly forgotten. Göbekli Tepe leaves us with a legacy as monumental as its stones, a profound paradox and a timeless lesson about humanity. It stands at the beginning of our story, yet was forgotten until barely a generation ago. Its builders helped spark what would become civilization, yet they erased their own identities so thoroughly that only now are we rediscovering them. As we reflect on this epic of creation and oblivion, what wisdom can we carry forward? First, the paradox. The first monumental civilization we know of had to bury itself to seed the future. Their crowning achievement was not a palace or a conquest, but a sanctum of spirituality and community. And when their era passed, they carefully interred it, almost as if planting it for a future harvest of knowledge. By covering their temple, they preserved it. By forgetting it, they ensured that one day it would be remembered anew. It's a humbling inversion of legacy. Most kings and nations strive to be remembered. These people chose to become invisible. Yet by disappearing, they ended up speaking more eloquently to us than many who left written records. In essence, they trusted their story to the earth and time kept their secret until we were ready to listen. The timeless lesson here is one of perspective on human nature. It turns out that our drive for meaning, to come together around shared beliefs, is as fundamental as our drive for food or shelter. Göbekli Tepe's builders, with so little in terms of material wealth, invested in something profoundly intangible, a holy meeting place. They remind us that from the very beginning, humans have been seekers and visionaries, not just survivors. Cooperation, imagination, and faith are not late arrivals in the human journey. They are at its foundation. When we gaze on those ancient pillars, we are looking at the dawn of the human spirit made manifest in stone. Yet this lesson comes with a poignant counterpoint, the fragility of memory. Entire worlds can be forgotten. For millennia, no one suspected that under a random hill in Turkey lay a temple centuries older than any other. How many other chapters of our story lie buried or dissolved by time? The tale of Göbekli Tepe warns us that even the greatest achievements can vanish from history's record, and it challenges us to cherish and preserve our collective memory. We are mortal, our societies are perishable, but through memory, whether written, oral, or etched in stone, we keep a thread connecting us to those who came before. The legacy of Göbekli Tepe is a paradox, yes, but it is also a beacon. It tells us that brilliance can emerge in the most unexpected circumstances, and that what we think we know about progress can be upended in a moment by a shovel in the ground. It urges us to approach the past with wonder and humility. If a band of Stone Age foragers could build something so grand, what else were our ancestors capable of that we have yet to discover? And if they could consciously let go of their greatest work, what might that say about the values they held, or the resilience of human culture to reinvent itself? Finally, Göbekli Tepe offers a hopeful reflection. Even when knowledge is lost, it can be found again. The builders likely never imagined a future world that would piece together their story, yet here we are, bridging a 12,000-year gap, learning from them. In burying their temple, they did not truly erase it. They unwittingly saved it for us. There is a poetic justice in that. It's as if they're giving us a second chance to remember the forgotten beginnings of civilization. What will we do with that knowledge? Perhaps to see our modern world with fresh eyes, recognizing that the roots of art, religion, and society run far deeper than we knew, and that we are part of a continuum, a long, unbroken line of dreamers and builders. Thank you for joining us on this epic exploration of humanity's deep past. If you found this journey illuminating, please hit the like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you won't miss future chronicles. And now the question turns to you. Which ancient mystery or lost civilization should we explore next? Would you like to delve into the enigmatic Indus Valley civilization with its undeciphered script and vanished cities? Or unravel the legend of Atlantis, the fabled sunken kingdom? Perhaps investigate the secrets of Stonehenge and the Neolithic people who built it? Let us know in the comments which story you want to see in our next documentary. Until next time, remember, history is full of buried truths waiting to be unearthed. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll see you on the next journey into our human story. Farewell.